And welcome back to SWBA Today. And in today's episode, we are doing a Game 1 recap of the games that took place yesterday. Next, we're going to be doing a Game 2 preview as the Los Angeles Clippers are set to take on the Denver Nuggets tonight. Next, we're going to be talking about a game that is currently in progress during the time of this recording. That's going to be the New York Knicks versus the Detroit Pistons. And so let's go ahead and start with the Game 1 recaps from yesterday. So we had 4 games in total that took place. Let's start with the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Memphis Grizzlies. The Thunder win 131-80. And if you have not got a chance to see this team the entire year, but then you tuned in to see them yesterday, you see exactly why a lot of people are picking the Thunder to come out of the West. And I think that what was most impressive about the way that the Thunder won this game is that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander did not have the best game. In fact, he had 15 points. He had 5 assists. He was 4 of 13 from the field and 1 of 7 from downtown. He got to the free throw line 7 times and made 6 of those. But still, it didn't matter. The Thunder took care of business, and across the board, I think you just see just how good that they are, because Jalen Williams had 20, Chet Holmgren, he had 19. Then you had Lou Dort, who I talked about. He had 12 as well. So just so many ways that this Thunder team can beat you. As far as shooting the ball yesterday for the Thunder, 50.5% from the field and 35.4% from downtown. So those are great percentages. When you look at the Grizzlies, only 34.4% from the field, and they shot 17.6% from downtown. So that's not going to get it done. Their best players, talking about the Memphis Grizzlies now, Ja Morant had 17. He was negative 25 in the plus-minus box score. Did get to the free throw line 5 times, only made 4 of those. But the key out of that is he only had 4 assists. And the next best player was Marvin Bagley III. He had 17 points on 8 of 8 shooting. In fact, he made a very good half-court shot at the end of the third going into the fourth to ensure that he did not miss a shot for the game. So you got to give him a ton of credit. But look, this was a tough loss for the Memphis Grizzlies. I think you're probably going to see more of these tough losses coming up for the Grizzlies. I don't think it's going to be this bad, but I think if you're in that Grizzlies locker room, you have to be trying to find a way to get a game out of this, because you need to get a game here on their home court, talking about OKC, but I just don't see that happening. I think that this is the Thunder series to really have. I picked them outright to win this one. And so let's see if the Memphis Grizzlies can at least get a game in this series. And so next up, the next game that we want to talk about here is going to be the Boston Celtics versus the Orlando Magic, as the Celtics win 103-86. And so this game was a lot closer than what it ended up being. And I have to give the Orlando Magic a ton of credit. We were previewing this series and we were talking about the defense of the Orlando Magic. And I think that they did a terrific job, really keeping it close for the most part and defending very well. The issue is that you have the SWBA champions of last season. They really just took off. And I think that you have to give Jason Tatum a lot of credit in this game. He had 17 points. He also had 14 rebounds. He had 4 assists. He was plus 23 in the plus-minus box score, so I think he did a great job. But Derek White, look, he played extremely well. He had 30 points in this one, 7 of 12 from downtown, 10 of 18 from the field. So he had a great game. And Jaylen Brown, who's been dealing with some knee injuries, didn't look too bad in this one. He had 16 points. He was plus 11 in the plus-minus box score, 6 of 14 from the field. I was wondering just, how impactful he was going to be with dealing with that knee situation. And Peyton Pritchard, look, he's quietly, I think, been one of the better players off the bench in the SWBA. And look, I think at some point you have to start to consider him for the 6th man of the year at some point, I think, in his career, if he's going to continue to come off the bench and produce the way that he did. He had 19 points in this one, plus 13, 3 of 3 from the free throw line, 4 of 6 from downtown, and 6 of 8 from the field. On the other side of things, when you look at the Magic, it came down to their big 2. And that is going to be with, Banchero, and then also too with Wagner. They both played well. 36 from Banchero, and then you also had Wagner had 23 as well. So both of those guys played good. But the issue was they just didn't get any other contributions from anybody else. They didn't get anything from Cole Anthony off the bench, who was huge for them in the play-in. He only had 4. Anthony Black, he only had 3. Jonathan Isaac played decent. He had 7 in this one. But the Magic, they've got to figure out a way to get others involved. And this has really been the issue with them, is just really scoring points. It's not defending, but it's scoring. But I do think that they are going to give, the Celtics some resistance. Maybe this turns into, I think, the gentleman's sweep where they win at least a game in this series, but I think it's going to be tough for them to overcome the Celtics. And so next up, you got the Cavaliers versus the Miami Heat. Again, I say much like the Orlando Magic and the Boston Celtics, I think that you're seeing something similar with the Miami Heat. And you got to give the Heat a ton of credit. I think that they were right there with the Cavs. They just really couldn't get over the hump. And, the Cavs, look, they struggled shooting the ball from deep. And I think that that's something that they've been doing well. And Donovan Mitchell, especially, he was only 2 of 9 from downtown. He still scored 30 points in this one, and he had 4 assists. And so you give him a ton of credit for figuring it out. But I think really the X factor for them in this game was Ty Jerome off the bench. I think it was his first playoff appearance. He had 28 points. He was plus 17. 5 of 8 from downtown and 10 of 15 from the field. So he hit some big shots, timely shots for this Cavs team, and they needed it because they really didn't get anything else off the bench in this game. DeAndre Hunter played 16 minutes. He didn't score. Isaac Okoro, he didn't do anything for them. And then he was just the main source of offense for them off the bench was Ty Jerome. And then when you look at the other starters, look, Evan Mobley, he only had 9 points in this game. So you got to give the Heat a ton of credit defensively for what they did there. Jared Allen had 12 points and 11 rebounds, even though he was a plus 15. So I think that they really minimized him. And then Darius Garland, I think that he got started later in this game. He had 27 and 5 assists plus 16, but I think that he came on strong at the end. For the Miami Heat, defensively, I loved what they were doing. They just couldn't find enough points, which is something that this team is going to struggle with, and they've been figuring it out as of late. You got to give Davion Mitchell a ton of credit. Once again, played big in this game for the Heat. He had 18 points. He also had 9 assists, so he almost had a double-double. Negative 20 in the plus-minus box score. Bam had 24, Wiggins 14, and then Tyler Hero 21. And so not a bad game for the Heat. They just have got to get some more, I think, from Khalil Ware. I think that Alec Burks is going to have to play a little bit more better. Alex Burks, has to play better. And also, too, Duncan Robinson or somebody else is going to have to chip in some more off of the bench. But a good win for the Cavs. I think that this is probably going to be maybe a gentleman's sweep as well. I think that the Heat are certainly going to get a game. I'm not going to be shocked if they get 2 games in this series, but the Cavs, the Thunder, I think that they are just leaps and bounds ahead of the teams that they are playing at this point in time. So next up, you got the Golden State Warriors versus the Rockets. And so we talked about this one and just talking about how this series is probably the most chippiest, saucy series in all the SWBA playoffs, because you have an up-and-coming team in the Rockets. You got the Warriors who have been there, and it was just, okay, you got the contrasting styles and everything else. And so the Golden State Warriors win 95-85, and I think that the key takeaway out of this is that the experience really showed. And I think that that's something that you're just not going to find in the stat sheet. It's something that you would have to just take a look at that game and look at just critical moments in which, even when the Rockets were able to get back into the game, it was just the timely answers from the Golden State Warriors. And you got to give Steph Curry a lot of credit, because the Warriors, I think they held him to 3 points in a game, but the degree of just difficult shot making for Steph Curry is it's on another level. And it seems that it ramps up more in the playoffs with more on the line. And I think that that's what you saw in this game. He played 40 minutes. He had 31 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. He was +3, 5 of 9 from downtown, 12 of 19. But just the difficult shots that Steph Curry made, that was huge. Having Jimmy Butler, that was a big pickup for them as well, because when this team needed a bucket, Jimmy Butler was able to answer. Between him and Draymond Green, those guys were absolute terrors on the defensive end. In fact, Jimmy Butler, 5 steals in this game. Draymond Green had 3 steals. I mean, they were all over the place defensively for the Golden State Warriors. And so I think that it starts there with their win. And then when you look at the Houston Rockets, look, I think that they did what they wanted as far as going out and rebounding at a high level. I think that that's something that we had talked about, how this team really excels at hitting the boards and trying to get the extra possessions and playing with the physicality. So I did see that yesterday. But the issue, and this is something that we've talked about with this Rockets team, and in fact, going back to their stat, 52 to 36 on the rebounds. That's terrific work for the Rockets. But it all comes down to you cannot have your main star having single digits. I've said this before with Jalen Green. He had 7 points in this game. He had 8 rebounds and 2 assists on 3 of 15 shooting. At some point, you cannot have those type of lows, especially in the playoffs. And I think that is why you continue to say that is super important when you want to take that next step. Now, Jalen Green is the type of guy that he will have a 7-point performance and then he'll come out and have 30 points. And I'm not saying that it's all his fault, but it does start with him because he is, I think, the main star for this team. And so he didn't necessarily have a good one. Van Fleet did not shoot the basketball very well. 2 of 13 from deep. He had 10 points in this one. Give Şengün a lot of credit. He's one of my favorite big men in the league. 26 points and 9 rebounds. He certainly came to play. And then Steven Adams came to play as well. 12 rebounds for him. Dylan Brooks, I like the defensive energy that I got from him, and he still gave you 11 too. And so this is going to be a chippy series, but if there's any team that has the most pressure to win a game in this next one out, it's the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets cannot afford to lose game 2, okay? Because if they lose game 2 and then they're traveling over to, Golden State and just how wild it's going to be in that home arena, the energy that Steph and those guys are going to get, the experience that they have, I don't like the Rockets' chances moving forward. They have got to get a split out of this thing. And so now we want to go ahead and jump into some of these game previews here. And so let's go ahead and start with the game that is getting ready to take place here later on today. And that's going to be the Los Angeles Clippers versus the Denver Nuggets. And I should say later tonight. And so, look, I think that when you go back and you look at game 1, this very much should have been a game that the Los Angeles Clippers won. I mean, the bottom line is the Clippers were up. They were giving the Denver Nuggets just all kinds of fits. And so for them to drop game 1, I think was very disappointing. And I'm talking about the Clippers because they absolutely should have won that game the way that James Harden was playing, the way that Kawhi Leonard was playing. I mean, it was exceptional. And for them to allow Denver to get back into the game and then not only get back into the game, but without a good bench production or without a good bench really throughout the entire year, and for you to let the Denver Nuggets get that one, I think that is just disappointing. And so when you look at the numbers from this last game, Kawhi had 22, 6 rebounds in this one. James Harden, 32 and 11. So I think that you still need to continue that. Zubac had 21 and 13. I thought that he was terrific initially there. So I think that production continues. With Chris Dunn, I thought that he played pretty well, and so did Norman Powell. But I think for the Clippers, they're going to have to get some more from Nicholas Batum. He's going to have to show up some more. Derrick Jones Jr. only gave you 4 in game 1. You need to see something from that. Ben Simmons, if you can get something terrific. And then also, too, with what they did in bringing Bogey over as well, he's got to knock down some shots as well. And so I think that when you look at Bogdanovich coming over from Atlanta, like here's a player that, look, he's instant offense. If he's hot, he was a +2, but he didn't have any points. And so I think that maybe changes the course of game 2 if he's able to knock down some 3-point shots. I'm not sure that the Denver Nuggets are going to be able to recover off of that because the Nuggets in game 1, they only played 3 people off the bench. They had Peyton Watson, who had 6 points. He had 2 rebounds, and he was -8. You have Russell Westbrook, who played the majority of the minutes off the bench. He had 15, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. He was +7, so you got to give Russ a ton of credit, and he did knock down a critical three-point shot there. And they also played Jalen Pickett as well. But aside from that, they really shortened the rotation and the bench, and they went heavily on their stars because listen to the numbers here. You have Aaron Gordon, who played 46 minutes. You had Nikola Jokic, who played 46. Jamal Murray, who's coming off the hamstring, played 48 minutes in this one. And Christian Braun, who had 45 minutes. And so that's why I was disappointed with the Clippers and not getting it done, because how could the Nuggets rely so heavily on the starters and you not be able to wear them down and just take game one? And so we'll see what the response is going to be. When you talk about pressure, I think that this team has probably got the second most pressure, and I'm talking about the Los Angeles Clippers, to get game two. Because if they don't get game two, the pressure mounts up with this Clippers team, because we've been talking about the Clippers, how well they've looked over the last couple weeks. And for them to come out of Denver 0-2, when they fired a coach, they fired a GM, and Jamal Murray has kind of struggled this season. He hasn't looked himself, but we know that he does show up in the playoffs. But still, this has not been the same Denver Nuggets team. And so the Clippers have been clicking at a high level. And so for them to get to this point, if they are not able to get a game two, I do not like their chances moving forward. I could see Denver really pushing past the Clippers, and I think that that would be a disappointing season for the Clippers, considering that they gave Kawhi Leonard the amount of rest that he needed. He's playing at a high level, and so if they waste that and they're unable to get out of the round one, extremely disappointing. And so I like the Nuggets in tonight's game. I still think that what's going to happen here with the Nuggets is I think that they're going to rely a lot on their championship experience. I think that they keep it close. And I think that even with a shortened rotation, some just tells me that the Clippers are some way, somehow going to find a way to give away game two. I don't know what it is, whether it's going to be just one play, 2 plays, or a series of plays. I just think that the Clippers are going to find a way to make this difficult. And I think that Denver shocks everybody and they get game two. So we'll see what happens there. And so next, I want to go ahead and talk about a game that is currently taking place, and that is going to be the Detroit Pistons versus the New York Knicks. And so I talked about this a little bit in the last time we were talking about the recaps, and where the Pistons really got blown out in the fourth quarter, because that's where the game really changed with the Knicks' ability to kind of close. In this game currently, if you're looking at it, the current score is 75-67. They're heading into the fourth quarter. And I liked the Detroit Pistons in this series to really shake it up. And that was one of the things that I talked about just about a week ago, because I thought that the Pistons, the way that Cade Cunningham was playing, the way that, just the veterans are playing, that I was like, the Detroit Pistons, I think, are going to get the Knicks. And tonight, 75-67, you still got to go through the fourth quarter, which is where this team has struggled in the last game. But currently, you got Cade Cunningham with 29 points and 9 rebounds in this game. So he's playing a lot better than what he was in game one, because even though, he was able to make his mark, you got to give OG Anunoby a lot of credit, because not only was he scoring, but the defense was there. But in tonight's game, Cade Cunningham has it going. He's 11 of 19 from the field, 1 of 4 from downtown, and he's getting to the free throw line as well. And so that is a great sign that your star has figured it out. And on the flip side of this, with OG Anunoby, look, he is not scoring the basketball the way he did in game one. In fact, he's struggling at the time of this, 3 of 8 and 6 points. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this game closes out. But I do think that the Pistons have the it factor to close this one, because they were right there in game one, and you got to give the Knicks a ton of credit with the way that they closed. But I do think the Pistons get this game, and I think that they are going to, if I'm picking a team that could just upset a team, the Detroit Pistons was my team that I had upsetting the Knicks. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see if they finish but I like them in game 2, and I like them for the series still. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking about this. Do you think that the Pistons will ultimately pull the shocker here in the SWBA playoffs, and they are going to go out and take care of business against the Knicks overall? What do you think here about the Los Angeles Clippers versus the Denver Nuggets? Do you feel like, no, the Nuggets are going to come up with game 2? Or do you feel like, no, the Clippers are going to answer and get this thing to 1-1 and start to make this interesting again? And let me know what your thoughts were about yesterday's games. What did you think about that Thunder's game? What do you think about the Celtics, Magic, Heat, Cavs, and that Warriors Rockets series, which I think is going to be must-see TV if you are watching the SWBA? And so anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, see the game and be the game. We'll see you on the next one. All right, peace.